JD. Welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Please hit like. This is a continuation video for the Hamilton 992 pocket watch. Very high-end railroad grade pocket watch I'm working on right now. And as you can see clearly, let me get it back up here. See that right there on my lapel? Not close to my lapel. That is the Ace of Diamonds, I think. Ace of Diamonds? So I've got a set of cufflinks. Nobody wears cufflinks anymore, so I'm going to start a new fad where you take your cufflinks and you put it right in that hole there. And I got two cufflinks so I can flip them around. But it's from my Card Magic stuff. That is the Ace of Diamonds. So I'm hoping to ace this particular project, like that spin on words, is play on words. And I also put a Donald Trump video up there this morning just for the heck of it. Because he keeps talking about JD, and I was like, it's not me, it's that Vance guy. And the funny part is his name is not JD Vance. His name is really JD Bauman or Bowman, right? And that is a Swiss name because my mother's maiden name was Bowman. Same name, so I could be related to this dude. Anyway, he has a beard and I don't. So it's a different JD, but check out that video. I think it's pretty funny. I sent that to my family just for a joke. So today we're going to continue working on the on this Hamilton pocket watch. I'm going to be reassembling and oiling the watch, and then we'll see where it sits. One thing I think I will do is try to get that bead error correct before I even put power on the movement. And the way I'm going to do that is look at where that impulse jewel is setting between the banking pins just before I apply power to it. And that way I may have zero bead error by doing that, or close to it. And this is what I want to do. So we'll try that out. I hope I don't forget doing that. Everything else in this watch is spanky clean. You saw me do the cleaning for the watch. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I even cleaned the hands, and I used, let me reach back here, Zippo lighter fluid to do this. So did most of my cleaning with the good old Zippo lighter fluid. Dangerous lighter fluid, extremely dangerous. Don't drink it, don't light cigarettes around it, but I guess people fill their lighters up with it. I clean watches with it, so I've got other lighter fluid as well, but I did a hand cleaning with the lighter fluid, and thanks to Jerome out there who gave me some suggestions on this, and Sonny out there who also gave me suggestions on the cleaning of this particular movement, and also Mark, who said, hey, you can probably throw that in your rinsing fluid too afterward, because it'll give it, and Jerome I think said it'll give it a really nice shine. Okay, so hope I got the right names there. I apologize if I don't. So that's where I am, and so let's get on with the assembly of this watch. I got to get my Myers number 58 movement holder. In a world this summer, one time only, the movement holder. That's the movie guy. So I'll see you in a few secs. So I think I'm going to start out by doing the hardest job possible in watchmaking, and that is winding this T-bracket mainspring back into the barrel. And I am going to use my bare hands because I know no other way of doing this. So let me just cut back here a bit. And I need to get this out of the way because this is the worst part of the whole thing. And I need to make sure I wind it in the barrel in the right direction. I did take photographs. I think I said counterclockwise when I did it, but we'll see. I can also check the arbor to make sure the arbor hook is on the correct side, and that's another way of determining which way you wind that into the barrel. First thing I do need to do though is put on my watchmaking glasses. Again, I don't like to advertise for people that much. That's a big lie. This is an Airy Loop, A-R-Y. Look that up, Airy Loop, best loop in the world. All metal up here, plastic there, but all adjustable, grabs onto your glasses. And again here what I did was I got some prescription glasses where the bottom part here is a 3 times. The upper part is about 1.75, which is what I need for computer screens. This is what I need for doing pocket watch repair right on my bench so I can see down without the loop. And then the loop itself, I believe the loop itself is a 5 times. And that way when I get the 3 times and the 5 times, I'm not sure how the math works. From the distance the loop is from the lens here, I could assume that it's an 8 times. I could. Somebody out there who's smarter than me can determine the times. Some optics engineer can tell me exactly what that is. But I can get from the loop here, if I grab a part with my little fingies here, and I look at that part, I'm looking at right around here is how close I'm looking. So right around there. Any further than that, it's fuzzy. Any closer than that, it's fuzzy. So it's right around there, which is perfect for detailed work, getting down and dirty on watch parts. So, but I'm going to wind this spring up right now. So if you look at my arbor here and my barrel, I'll throw my barrel in the center there, and here's the arbor. This part of the arbor goes through the bottom of this barrel like that. So I'm just trying to do this without dropping stuff. Oh my God. Oh me, oh my. It's my David Letterman. There we go. So there's the arbor in the barrel. So that sounds like a song. The arbor in the barrel, the arbor in the barrel. Now I'm looking at the hook on the inside of that arbor. So take a close look. I'll be back in 1 second. Just so I don't screw this up. Where's my lens? So I'm having a look. I actually don't have to be back. You can see me up top. So I'm seeing the direction of the hook on the barrel. And the hook is that little tiny hook there. And the hook onto the hook, this guy has got to be in this direction to hook onto the hook. So otherwise it won't hook onto the hook. So that's another way of telling which way the spring goes. And if I look at my pictures, oh my God, the spring does go in that direction. So I'm looking at my photos that I have of this particular thing, which is here, and this tells me how it was left, right? So which means I've got to wind this in this way, which means I've got to start the wind this way, and I'll do that with my fingies on the barrel. I've seen guys, the pros do it this way. You can't do it with watchmaker's gloves on, I'm sorry. I'll put some light oil on this after. I might fail at it initially, but I can't get that initial T here in the bottom of that slot with a spring winder. It's not possible. I've tried it a million times. It always slips and slides and goes the other way. It's a very difficult thing to do. So I've tried it with different spring winders as well. So now I'm not going to do it. So I just have a very clean hands, by the way. I just washed them. They're dry as hell, so any residual sweat should be off of those hands. So to wind that into the barrel, I'm going to start with this end here and just get that banked around the corner and then start winding it. And you'll see how I do this. I'm trying to find that little slot there on the edge. There's a tiny slot on the top next to my disgustingly long guitar fingernail. And so what I do is I grab that. I'm trying to get that exactly where that slot is. And I might be off. If I'm off and it doesn't work, I got to start all over again. So that's not good, but it often happens. So I'm just going to do this and tuck that in like that. And I'm going to look on the other side to see if I managed by some way to get that slot in there. And yes, I did. So it's in there now. So I just took a quick peek at that slot, and I'm going to just start curling the spring around. The first turn I have to make is around that lip of that welded on piece, which is a little tougher. Once I get it past that lip, and I'm just sort of leaning my hands forward, I can see a problem already because I can now see the opening of that slot. No, the spring still seems to be in there. Well, I'm going to keep winding and see what happens at the end of the day, right? So it seems to be there. I'm not sure if it is, but it seems to be there. But I'm going to wind it in anyway, and then after I've wound it in, I just keep doing this and passing the spring to the next thumb. Again, I hate to say it, but these disgustingly long thumbnails are super handy for watch work. Because you can take the thumbnail and then pinch something with it, and it's a positive direct pinch, and it's not, there we go. So now it's in there. Now I want to look at that slot to see if the slot is high, and I'm not sure if it is or not, but there's what it looks like, and I think we're good. I think that slot, I think the spring is in the slot. The spring is in the slot. I'm looking at that slot with respect to the upper barrel. Yeah, I can see that spring sitting in the slot, so I think we're good here. It's kind of weird because if I look in the slot, I can also see the slot. The spring is on the edge of the slot, and the slot has got a space on it. So this is making me think that there's room there. So, but there isn't. So that's phase one of this. Phase two is now putting this arbor into the spring, and sometimes I have to use a screwdriver then to actually do this job. So I'm going to just go a little bit close up with you here. I wear a hat a lot of times. It's not because you guys don't know I have no hair. It's because my head gets cold. So I think anybody that has a wife that keeps the temperature of the house down to 65, 66, like my wife does. Of course, our house is in Celsius, but it's the same as in Fahrenheit. It's still cold. Cold is cold, my friends. So there we go. So there's the barrel. So now I'm trying to line the hook up with the slot to make sure I've got a little bit of slot in there, right, like that. And what I like to do is put pressure on the edge, on one edge, as I do this. Let me move that back a bit, and then use a screwdriver to open the other side. So I may have to get down and dirty here to do that. So I got a super close up here. I bet you any money my head's going to hit the camera. So what I'm going to try to do is roll this in. That's why you need to put the watch in a bench block like this, so you can do this. And then once I've rolled it in, as you can see, it's rolled in right now. I want to make sure that hook finds its home. So it's in there now, and I want to squeeze that a bit to make sure the hook has found its home. And that's a thing of beauty right there. So if you look at that right now, and there's the hook, and the hook is hooked on to the I'll turn this light off on my camera here. The hook is hooked onto the mainspring, and I look down to make sure I've got a little bit of hook showing out, and I do. So don't want to push up on the mainspring arbor right now. What you want to do now is line the cap up, and so the cap has a very small hook for the T on it, right? So you want to make sure that T hook is on the right side, the correct side, and lined up with what's left over here. So I'm just doing this here. I hate when you're holding tweezers on a round object and it just wants to spin, right? So here you go. There's that T. So I'm trying to line it up so I have a good alignment of where that T is. And it's right there, so I can see that crystal clear. And I want to make sure the T goes on either side. And now, so there is the T on either side now, and there's no T sticking out. And I'm just going to put some pressure on the barrel going around here to snap that in. And once I have it snapped in, looking flat like this, I usually, and I'll do it right now, I put my tweezers in there and I give it an extra squeeze all the way around. And this is to make sure there's no parts of the cover of the barrel that are extended, because that can interfere with the operation of the mainspring. So that's it there. Now I'm going to clean this with Rodico. Like I said, I washed my hands earlier and they're spick and span, but this was looking pretty darn good. And I will oil now the inside rim here as it moves around, and I'll oil this side here as well. So that's it. That's putting the mainspring back in the barrel by hand. If you've never seen it before, that's it. Now that little job is only going to take you 20 years to get good at. I'm sure you can get good at it a lot faster, but it took me a long time and a lot of frustration. Believe it or not, a little bit of thumbnail is really handy, even though everyone will say, that's disgusting, cut your nails. I got these nails here for taking out mainsprings and stuff, and they're great for plucking in guitar. So I can do Travis picking with those fingernails if you're a guitar player out there. So play Dust in the Wind. That's for Travis picking. So that's what Travis said anyway. So now I'm going to grab the other parts here of the watch and I'm going to lay them out. So I'm going to put my glove on now. Let's go get that glove. And oh, by the way, finger cuts bug the crap out of me. I've tried using it, but it cuts off circulation in my finger, and that's probably everyone else has that feeling. If you ever got finger cuts that don't do that, let me know. But I just use a full glove. I can buy a box of these things, of like 100 of them, for very little money on Amazon. And so I've got these gloves here. They're easy to put on, and they're comfortable as heck. So, and they provide the same kind of dexterity feeling as the finger cots would. So anyway, I still haven't gotten my number 58 movement holder out here, but let's go grab that in a second. But first I want to take some parts out here and just line them up. So what I do is I just take the parts and I line them up on my mat. Let me move my camera back here, live and interactive. And this way they're out of the bin here. And they force me to reassemble the watch because I'm too lazy to put them back in. So I grab all the parts and I lay them down. When you're laying them down on this kind of mat, it's got a little bit of not rubber, but yeah, I guess it's kind of it's bouncy. That's the term. That's the technical term for it. So I like that because this allows me to drop those gears here that I've got here. If you put them down, there's a chance of the pressure of you putting them down breaking a pivot. So get them close and just let them drop. That's what I recommend is the best way of doing it. I'm just laying the plates out here with the screws, so everyone's got a home here. And this is to make sure that I've got the right screws with the right plates and blah, blah, blah. The funny thing, these screws are probably all the same, but sometimes you just don't know. And this just ensures every time I do it the same way, and I know that the plates and screws are good. So that's why I do it that way. And as you can see, I'm laying out that wheel. I'm going to look up what that wheel is right now. I'm going to grab one of my books, and it's going to tell me. And you folks are going to go, why does he not know that? Isn't he a almost near professional watchmaker? And I go, well, yeah, but my memory's of shits. So I can remember a lot of things. Names are hard for me. People's names, other names. Numbers, not a problem. But I do remember my handle when I was a CB guy when I was a kid. So I was XM52 266 84, the one Cobra coming at you. We're up, we're down, and we're gone. Good buddy. 3s and 6s upon you. If you've ever been a CB person. I did that as a kid. It was a lot of fun. These are the screws, I believe, for this. Yeah, and I see a hair here. Any hair that's on a mat here is not mine, okay? See that? I leave no hairs behind. No hairs behind. So if you find a hair, if there's a murder and there's a CI, the special agent guys, CSI guys showing up and they say, we found a hair, it ain't me. I think you can go to some other dude for the hair. So here's that dial washer, the mystery name of the thing here. And I'm going to look that other thing up in the book in 2 seconds. I'm going to show you me looking it up in the book. This is the screw, the mystery screw for this here. So once I get that back together again, and here's the pallet fork. So pallet fork's super small. I'm going to leave it in here, and I'm going to leave this in here, and I'm going to leave the hands in here. But the rest of the stuff is out there for assembly. The pallet fork I will assemble, but I'm going to leave it in the container here. And the other container, I have there's parts that I put in the ultrasonic cleaner. I'm going to have to go get those. My wife said, I left them outside your door because they were in the bathroom and they were in my way. Well, here are those parts, and I'm telling you, you wouldn't believe the amount of dirt that came off this chain and this case here. Tons of dirt. These have been drying overnight, so there's no problem anymore. There's no ultrasonic cleaning fluid in there anymore. It's completely bone dry. So what I want to do is make sure this is oiled properly as well, so I don't have any future problems with this. So this is a nice case, actually. The case is a 10 karat, so it's not a high-end case. There's the case, and it is a Keystone watch case Hamilton. So it is a Hamilton case. It is a railroad model written on it, so this case is worth a lot more, even though it's only 10 karat gold filled, because it says railroad model on it. So that's not somebody who took a case and just decided to flip in a railroad, a vintage railroad movement into a case. So I've got someone coming to the door in a few minutes to pick up that platform balance escapement, and that's the escapement I was working on is from a platform balance, and the platform balance is from a clock, and the clock would look like this. And this is one of my carriage clocks. And the platform balance, I'll go forward here with this. Nice side view here on this. Is a beautiful clock. And the platform balance is only run in one direction, so you don't have to worry about 5 positions. There's only one position, and there's a newer platform balance, I think, that was installed on an older watch. Hard to tell actually, but probably a newer one. And I had cleaned this watch completely and got it back together again, and I think it's almost 9:30. So this thing is running really well. So I repaired the platform balance there, and I had to repivot the balance staff for that. The lower balance staff was bad, and you saw the video of me repivoting it. It's working, but I'm going to let the gentleman install it in the clock, see if it works really well. If it doesn't, I may have to shave more material off of the lower pivot. I shaved a lot off. I didn't want to shave too much off. I did a kind of a blower test on it to see if it ran around in a circle. It did, so I think I'm good, but you never know. So the hard part was when I first put it in there, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to have to shim this, and I said, nope, can't do that. So I just removed more material from the bottom of this. So that's an aside. So I'm an advertiser for Myers movement holder number 58. I get 0 for advertising, but here it is. It's the most amazing movement holder. It is my third hand. Your third hand, see, it says right there. So it's probably my fourth hand, I'd say. It's a lot of hands, and I've put the larger pocket watch jobby doohickeys in here. What would I call them? Accessory grabbers, watch movement thingamajiggies. And there's a lot of other watch movement thingamajiggies in there. And to make a separation, I just took one of my old business cards, folded it over, and guess what? It fits perfectly. So that was to separate the compartments. Put that aside here. And that's the movement holder that I'm going to put the movement into. So here we go. And so I'm going to make sure that it is clear, that the setting mechanism is clear of anything. I'm not squishing it. So, and let's just do this and move it out a bit. And there we go. And then push that in like that. And the setting mechanism, I'll show you in a second, is absolutely clear, and I don't have to turn this a million times. As I told you before, it's sprung, so there's a spring there. That's probably too many times. There we go. That's a bit better. And you can see this setting right in the center of your screen. That setting mechanism is not being interfered with whatsoever. It's pretty close to the base of that thing though, isn't it? But it's not touching anything, so it's good. It's good. It's good as gold. Let me see how close that is, if it's actually touching something. It looks like it's touching the base of the edge. So because of that, I think I'll rotate this guy just a bit here and put that on the outside of it. And now it's on the outside. A little bit anal retentive here. So now, as you can see, it's sitting there on the outside, so it's not pressing anything, which is what I wanted. And I think we're going to reassemble this watch. Can't remember if I took pictures, but I kind of remember how things go. I think I'll put the pallet fork in last, so when I wind the watch up, I'll let it run, and I'll do a just run the train, as they call it, and just to make sure that I've got a good steady run of everything before I put the pallet fork in. So once I've run the train, then I can put the pallet fork in and let it go. So let's build the watch up now. So to build this up properly, I really didn't need to take a picture. All I needed to do was have this picture of the Hamilton 992 movement, so I can see how the gears are stacked up. And they do go from the smaller gears being the lowest to the center wheel being the highest. So that's how they're stacked up. But you've got to have the mainspring barrel in first in order for the center wheel to go over that mainspring barrel. So that's a good indicator. Normally I take pictures, but it is a 992, so. I'm not political at all, but I thought this is funny as hell. So if you listen to this, hopefully it plays.
Originally, JD was probably not for me, but he didn't know me. And then when we got to know each other, he liked me maybe more than anybody liked me. And
I think he's got the wrong JD, okay? So these are synthetic oils, which means they last a lot longer than they say on the bottle, by the way, because you don't want to buy these a lot because they're a lot of money. So I use 9104 or HP 1300 here. Let me see if I can just turn that around here so you can see it. HP 1300. I guess it's oil here or something left over from these bottles. So anyway, that's HP 1300. I think I gotta wash my hands again because I've got oil on my fingers. How the hell did that happen? And this here is the 9010 Syntholube. So I've got 9010 I'm going to use for the smaller pivots and parts, and that's good. That'll work nicely. So put that aside. And then the last one is Microgliss, which is D5, and I use that for all the winding and setting mechanisms. So that's the 3 oils I will use for this particular job. And I did not need to use 8213 barrel grease because this is not an automatic watch movement, as you saw with the barrel, the T barrel, and so didn't need to use it. So the first little bit of oiling I'm going to do is on the inside of this barrel here, and I'm also going to oil the barrel. So here we go. This is the 1300 I'm using to oil with, and I'm going to turn my camera off because I think I've got to go a little bit down and dirty here. But I'm oiling in the hole here of this to make sure, and it'll spread. You only have to oil it in one place, and it spreads nicely. So, and the barrel here drops down into that hole, and that will spread nicely as well. So I just want to make sure there's a good amount of oil right here. Not as much oil as there was when I saw that when I first got this watch. Oh my God, it was a ridiculous amount of oil. So I can do that and then put that barrel in there and look at that baby spin. That's, you want to make sure it's well lubricated. Now because I'm working backwards, I just got a bing, someone's at my door. I believe all the wheels, with the exception of the center wheel, will be in the pinion up position. So let's see if that works. All right, given that I might be correct, I'm going to put these parts back and recall that the oiling has been done on these parts already. So we're going to put them back in order here, and I may have to shrink down in order to do this properly. So hang on a sec. All right, I've shrunken down. You're going to see the top of my head for some of this, but I'll leave it in there just in case I have to pop up and say something really intelligent. So I grab the escapement wheel first and look down here on the watch. And that would be right here. Here. And remembering I'm leaving the pallet fork out of this movement for now. So that's the escapement, and then the fourth wheel goes in next, and that's pivot down, so it's pretty easy. It's and again all the pinions are in the up position here. So that's the fourth wheel, and then the intermediate wheel, same thing. It's pinion up. Trying to lay this down nice and easy. And then the center wheel is the only one that goes pinion down because the center wheel is attaching or connecting with the teeth of the mainspring barrel. So that goes in like that, and there you can see all the different connections of the wheels. And when you name the wheels, I'll just lecture right now, so I apologize for anyone who's a watchmaker. But the barrel, mainspring barrel, is considered number 1. Then the second wheel is considered the center wheel. That's number 2. The intermediate one is over here, and that's number 3. And then the fourth wheel is the seconds, is where the seconds hand is attached, the fourth wheel. And then they don't call this the fifth wheel. They just say the escapement wheel. So that's what that's called. And I've not included the pallet fork, so I can put the plates on this watch, and then from there I can basically run the watch and watch to see the movement of all the wheels and see if it's all good and kosher. I have to add a little bit of HP 1300 here, and I want to put that again, getting in close here. I want to put it right on the edge here where the arbor is going in. And that'll turn around without a problem. And I'll oil the top part after I get this in. I could put a little bit of oil on the edge here. There we go. That'll spread around. And now I want to put in a thicker oil, which would be the D5, which is typically or typically the yellow stuff, right? And I want to put that thicker oil, the D5, right in here, like that. Just layer that in like that, and that'll spread around without a problem. And I'm going to put a little bit of D5 here, where this setting arm comes in here. There we go. And a little bit as well. This is just a thicker oil, right where the stem rests, right here. So put a little bit of oil there. That just makes things work a little better. So that's that. Now I want to be able to put the stem in. Now I should be right in this, but this part here of the stem would ride with the gearing part, the cam or the gearing part facing inward. So it's kind of like a clutch, because I think this is actually called the clutch wheel. But I want to put a little bit of oil on that too, and I'm also going to use some D5 on this instead of the HP. And this just allows this to ride back and forth much easier. I'm not sure why I'm losing my voice, but it's because it's close to lunchtime, that's why. A little bit of D5 in there. And I just gotta get a little bit more in here. And this will allow this part to ride back and forth a lot easier. And then I can just put this in on here like that. You see the way that works? And that's nice and smooth. And now I've got to lay this into the watch, and hopefully everything lines up properly. So I just want to lay this down and have that cam. If I look at the watch right now, it should be sitting right over the top of it. Like so. And there we go. I think that's in nicely. Just like that. And so now I believe I can put the plates down now. So I can, if I screw up, I'll let you know. So I can take the first plate here. This plate is easy because there's only 2 wheels that hit this plate, and the 2 wheels are right on the top here. So because I think I need another glove here for this. Now under camera it's a little trickier, but this is still doable. What I want to do here is just lay this down, and I want to try to line up these wheels. So after I've put this down, I should be fairly lined up, but there's often the requirement to pick up the watch and try to get that centered properly. So I've got the screws down. Everything seems to have melded nicely. So I'm trying to see to make sure that everything is down nicely. And it's always good to look at the edge of the watch, and when I'm looking at the edge here, I can see that the plate is still up a bit. So this could mean a few things. It could mean it just needs to be worked into position. It looks like it's showing the pivots, which is nice. And when I just touch the wheel here, it looks like I've got some positive rotation on the wheel. So it should be able to go straight down. The only thing that could cause that not to would be the position of these wheels here. But what I'm going to do is put the screws in, but not tighten them. That way I've got it kind of in there, and I can move it around until it's in perfect position. So there's 3 screws here, and I'll just throw those in. If I throw the center one in first, then I've got some control over it. I'll just hold that down with my fingers, And I get my area eye loop out of the way because it can cause issues, but just put that in and just don't tighten it. Just put the screws in loosely like that, and then you got to make sure the movement is in like the plates are actually sitting down nicely on the watch. If they're not, they could damage the pivots. So one of the pivots might not be through the plates, but I'm going to put this plate on first and then the second one, and then I'm going to flip it over and make sure I see all the pivots. So that is how it's done, and I don't think there's any other way of doing this. And I haven't oiled the top yet because the oil goes on to the each one of the jewels here. So, and there's carriers for that. I don't like using the glove while I'm using my I don't like having a glove on while I'm doing this, but I'm going to keep going anyway. So then the second plate here is only covering these two things here. So the glove is good in this situation where I've got to handle the parts. So I'm just trying to get the camera configured right. Just move it back a little bit and rotate it. There we go. And I want to drop this in now and see if I can, by a miracle, not have to nudge these too much. So there goes that here. And it would be a miracle if they're all in, but I'm going to now put the screws in for this. I bought a stick a while back. Let me take off my glove. And this is a Bergeron stick, and I advertise for it all the time. Not that I make any money from these guys, but it's a Bergeron 7010, and it's a plastic stick you can use for pretty much anything, but it's great for watchmaking because you can very lightly, it's a fairly long stick and it's got certain features on it, and the flat feature on this end allows me to very carefully hold this down right while I put the screws in place like this, and then I'm able to jog things around a bit, right? So these are the two screws that belong in here, but normally I will pick this up and be nudging it, and I'll show you. I'll do the nudging while you're watching, but I'll do it on the small camera here. I would be holding that down while I'm doing this, but I want to make sure those wheels are in place. So what I do for that is I use this device here, and this little hook allows me to go inside and just play with the gears to make sure they're in place. So I'll show you what I do here to do that. And hopefully it's not a long job, but I'll put this up to my face like this, and you can entertain yourself by looking at my tweezers. So I'll put this up to my face like that, and I'll see what's off and what isn't off. So I can see right now my escapement wheel is way off. And you really don't know whether it's left or right, but and you do have to do the intermediate wheel first to get that in place. And then, hey, there we go. I think it just slid in place, and then the escapement wheel, there we go. That goes in much nicer. So those wheels are all in place right now. So now I'll just put that down. I've tweaked it, so it's been officially tweaked. And now I'll take these screws and tighten them a little more, but not a lot. So I still want to have these screws down a bit, but not completely down until I know that all the wheels are in place and all the pivots are in place. If I look at the plate on the side and I see the plate is all the way down in the back here on the rim, and then the plate in the front is all the way down, chances are I've got good connection on everything. And what I don't like is that this plate here doesn't seem to be all the way down, or is it? Oh no, it is. So it's slid down. If you have a look at that, that's almost all the way in. So I think I might be able to tighten this just a bit more. And again, I'm not going to tighten it all the way until I'm sure everything runs. So it'll run a little loosely at first, but I want to make sure it all runs. And there we go. So I'm not squeezing it down and applying pressure that way, right? And I'll just tighten that a little bit now again. And this one here. Now as a quick test, you can take a piece of pegwood like this, just a piece of pegwood like this, and just put a little bit of pressure on the gears to see if the wheels are turning. And they are. As you can see, the wheels are turning. So if I just turn it around so you can see it quite well, and I just put a little bit of pressure like that, and you can see movement right up to the escapement wheel, right? Like that. So now everything's pretty much turning, but again, I don't want to tighten these down until I can wind it a bit, know that it's working, and then I'll tighten it down. But the first thing I want to do here is put a little bit of oil. And what I'll do for oiling is I'm going to use the I'm cleaning my oiler on my pad, and my oiler looks like this. I have a very nice Bergeron oiler, and I've got some wood in there to jab my oiler into. That's pith wood, by the way. So, and my oilers, let me see if I can get there. So my 9010 is here, but for the larger gears, I'm going to be using the HP 1300 oil. And I don't want to over oil. I do want to put oil in there, but I don't want to over oil it. So just a dab in the oil well for that. That's your center wheel, and then your intermediate wheel as well. You can put a little bit of oil in there, and then I can use my 1300 for my that's my 1300 for my fourth wheel. And then when I get to the switch oilers, I use my blue oiler here, which is got a smaller oil head on it. And I'm going to use the 9010 then for my escapement. And let me just show you something on oiling, okay? When you put the oiler in and you pull it out slowly, you don't get a lot of oil on the end of it. It's pretty, it looks like this. And you get oil, but not a lot of oil. So it looks like that. Now if you put it in the oil and you pull it out fast, like that, you get a ball of oil on the end. See that? You end up with a ball of oil on the end. So if you want to take a little bit of oil, which you don't want a big ball of oil, pull it out slowly, and then only a bit of oil attaches to it. So then that's, oh, and I don't actually, I just thought of this, I don't need to do the escapement because it's got the cap jewel on it. So no need, cap jewel done, all good to go. So the next thing I need to do is put in some parts here. I need to put in the ratchet wheel. I think that's called the ratchet. No, the ratchet wheel is second. So I'm going to look up the name of this wheel here because it's pissing me off. I can't remember. So I've got the crown wheel first. Why I didn't remember that, I don't know, because it looks like a crown. If you look at the wheel itself, it looks like you're wearing a crown. It's probably why they call it that. That's the crown wheel, and it goes over like that. And then there's an intermediate setting or bushing that goes in the middle there, like that, and sits on top of the crown wheel. And then I've got the screw here. I don't believe I need to oil anything in the crown wheel. I think it's a winding mechanism. And if I look at what I've got under here, the only thing I could possibly do is oil a bit of oil on the base of that. So let's try that out. And again, it's a thicker oil I'd be using for this. So I think I'll use the D5 for this. So just put a little bit here and a little bit here. And that'll rub around. And then just a tad on the edge that winds here. And that will rub around, no problem, right? And I'm not going to oil any of the gears, the teeth on the gears. It's a different schools of thought on that, but I'm not going to do that. That's kind of a waste of time. So I'll put that down now, and that goes in like that. And there's a big screw here, and the important part of this big screw is that the screw goes in backwards, so you wind this thing backwards. Now some watch companies actually have made a mark on the actual crown wheel to show that is wound in backwards. So I don't tighten it, it's lefty tighty as opposed to the other way. So, and it's all about the math of making sure that that's nice and loose. Yep. It's all about the math of making sure when this thing turns, it doesn't turn the screw the wrong way and then take the screw out. So same thing, right? And same as this, I don't need to put any more oil on this here at all, but there's a little tiny flat part of this that's lined up, and you just do your best to make sure you're lining up the flat part here, and you've got to get the click spring out of the way. So you can use the Bergeron tool I have to get the click spring out of the way, or you can use a piece of pegwood. Don't use a screwdriver because there's a likelihood that you might scratch something. So just lay that down like that and get that click spring out of the way like this, and then set this down. Come on, settle down. It wants to sit down. There we go. I push it on both sides. It's pretty tight. It's pretty tight putting that in, but now it's flush on both sides, which is good. And then don't forget there's a cap on that just sits on there like this, and that's just, it's functional a bit, but it's more decorative than functional. So, and then the only screw I have left has got to be this one here, and I'll put that one in like that, and then screw that down. I don't need to hold anything here, but I'll just use my stick here to make sure nothing moves, and then screw this down like that. Now when I wind this with the screw, it'll make the movement move. You see that? I'm getting a little bit of movement on the train here. And the good news is everything is working, right? So look at that, spinning nicely. The watch kind of has to work its way in. The first few times it's not smooth, but then it works its way in and there's no problems at all. Right now there's very little power on the watch and it's still spinning. So I'll do that again just to work it in. Now I'll tighten the plates up now because I know that everything is working. And by tightening these plates up, you just spin it while I'm tightening. Look at that baby go. By tightening the plates up, there's better alignments of the wheels and everything else. So with the plates loose, it's not as aligned, so my spinning wasn't as consistent. So let me do that one more time here. Just, it'll go like this, it'll hit it, then it'll go backwards just a bit. And I'll tighten this one up here and tighten this plate up here. Alright, and then just turn that again. That's going to wind it. And there you go. And that's running the train, it's called. So that's train running as opposed to the train. And it looks like I've got some pretty smooth action running the train. It's funny when it gets to the end, of course, the momentum of the impulse, or the momentum of the escapement wheels trying to turn the other wheels, but they're in place and they're not going anywhere, so it kind of bounces just a bit, as you saw, right? So, but that's a good way to test it. And then I can also put a little bit of, just hold this with my finger and screw this down a little more. There we go. Now that's a little tighter, but it doesn't need to be super tight because it's not going to find itself. See, with the slightest little whine, I'm getting great action on that, so that's excellent. See what time it is. I got plenty of time here. So that's that part. That's done. And I want to make sure that I've got the setting mechanisms are working on this. So I want to flip this around for a second. I could put the pallet fork in right now because the train ran well. so I could get that out of the way and put that pallet fork in and make sure the pallet fork will snap back and forth. And I've got the pallet fork is over here in my other container, so I'm just going to take that out. It has been cleaned, as you saw earlier. So let me just grab the pallet fork here, and it's in the right position, so I'm just going to put it down. I'll put it down right here for now. And I don't need any of the other things here. I do need the bridge for the pallet fork, and it's not called a cock when it's got screws on both sides. It's the pallet fork bridge. So again, I'm going to put the pallet fork in here very likely, but what I want to do just before I put the pallet fork in, I want to dab the end of the jewels in the pallet fork in this stuff. So this is 9415, Mobius 9415. You can look that up. It's kind of a gel, and you put that on the pallet fork, and you don't put a lot on, just a little tiny bit, and that gel stays in place, but it provides an exceptional lubrication for the pallet fork as it hits those feet that are on the escape wheel. So it's amazing lubrication. So I'm going to see if I can get in close and dirty on this. I'm going to mix this around a bit because it needs to be mixed around here. And this is a gel, so I'm just going to mix this around, and I'm going to clean the oiler off. I'm going to see how dirty that is. I'm going to clean the oiler off with some watch paper, and just to make sure I don't get any residual stuff on anything. So just clean that oiler off on watch paper, and I'm going to jab that back into the pithwood. Get rid of that watch paper, jab that back into the pithwood to make sure it's clean. I'm going to change my pithwood too because it looks like it's getting aged just a bit. And now I want to take this, I want to do this before I put it in place. So I'm just going to jab. I'm just going to get a little bit of this stuff on this, on the oiler, and not too much. And now, with the exceptional care, I'm going to try doing this while I'm not sure whether I can hold this while I'm doing it, but I'll just pretend that I can't and just touch it here. That's one. And that's two. That's perfect. So that pallet fork now has that little bit of this Bergeron 9415 on it. And this stuff is great. I've seen this stuff increase the amplitude of a watch exceptionally, like a lot, by having that, and it spreads it to every one of the feet on the on this, so we get definite feet spreading. So I'm just going to move stuff around so you get a better camera view of this, and we're good with our visuals. All right, see if I can do this without forking it up. And the guard pin from the pallet fork is on the bottom here where it needs to be, and the pallet fork is going to go right in place right here with the arm of the pallet fork between the banking pins. I just want to make sure that the pallet fork has found the hole, the jewel hole, and then I can drop in the bridge. This is a bit tricky because the bridge goes down. I may want to put a little bit of oil on the inside of that bridge, but there's no cap jewel on this. Well, let me see if there is or not, but I want to put a little bit of oil on the inside. I don't want to take that off. So let's do that. Just a tiny bit of oil. Now there's different schools of thought of whether there should be any oil at all on this. And it's so small that most schools of thought say don't oil it. But I'm going to oil it. It looks like it has a cap, but I'm not going to bother taking that off because I don't actually think this thing needs to be oiled. You guys can correct me. The old correct me if I'm wrong thing. When people say that, they're usually not wrong, but they're afraid of being wrong. In my work life, I've heard people say that for years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm like, if you're wrong, then don't friggin' say it. So that drops in now. And the question is, I have to play with the pallet fork to make sure that it's finding the upper jewel hole. And sometimes it's just a matter, see, I knocked something and it went around, and I think I'll drop the screws in lightly, just like I did before, and maybe use my Bergeron stick to hold things in place. And once I get one screw kind of in there, I'm good. But I don't want to rock this thing around. It's very touchy. Again, not tightening it, just making sure that it's not even snug in this case, it's just there. So, but I don't need to hold anything down now because I've got one side in, which is good. The important part of this is to make sure that that jewel is in place, otherwise you can snap the pallet fork upper pivot. So I want to make sure that upper pivot is going inside that jewel, so I don't want to tighten it at all until I know that's a fact. And if I look at it, I'm trying to look and see if I can see that upper jewel in there. But the best way I do it normally is just by moving this around. Like that. Oh, there we go. I think I managed to put it in place. And when I get it in place, I will again tighten it a bit, but snug. Or not snug, just barely tighten it. Like that. And like this. And on this particular watch, you can kind of look inside, as you see, and the metal to metal here, and to see if there's any crack at all. So now when I put a bit of pressure on the actual, if I take the ratchet wheel and put a bit of pressure on it, it's winding the mainspring, right, like that. And that should hold the pallet fork in place. So when I touch the pallet fork with my piece of pegwood, which I use, because you don't want to damage anything, it should snap back and forth, and there we go. See, it's snapping back and forth, and it's got a very good snap to it. And this means that it'll kick that balance side to side really well, right? So that's good. Now what I want to do though is I want to take all of the pressure off the mainspring, so that when I put the, well, I'm going to put, first of all, I'm going to put the balance in, and then I'm going to take the pressure off the mainspring, and then I'm going to see where this sits with respect to banking, or not banking, with respect to bead error, because it should be sitting in the center with zero pressure on the mainspring and the impulse jewel just riding there. So now I can tighten. You got to make sure you remember to tighten things after you've loosened them, right, or just barely tighten them. So now I can tighten these screws here a bit, because we're kind of in the money here. So, and again, while I'm tightening these, I'm feeling for any resistance, and I just touch this here. Yeah, and it snaps back. That's good. And I'm looking at the crack inside here to make sure everything is snugged down well. So that's all good. That's really good. So that's some seriously good action there. And then I've got that done. I'm going to attack. I'm going to flip this around a bit and have a look at any oiling that might be required. And remembering I've done most of my jewel oiling before. All of my jewel oiling before. I was just making sure that there was nothing remaining as I did this. Let me get my movement holder so it's nice and snug as a bug in a rug with a tug and a lug. Oh my God, this is bad. I'm reaching down. Every time I reach over, I know where things are over here, so it's pretty handy. So there we go there. So now I've got this nicely in, and you saw me do some of the jewels here and some of the oiling. So some of the oiling I want to do on this side is I want to make sure that I put some of the HP 1300, which is the red oil, on the mainspring arbor, although I did do a little bit of oiling before, but this is going to help the mainspring arbor float here without a problem. So I just put that in there and let it rest. I also want to make sure I've oiled these wheels here a little bit. And again, not a lot's needed, but I can oil them and then make sure that that everything kind of works. I don't need to oil the gears themselves. I do want to put a little bit of oil on the shaft here for the minute wheel. That'll help the minute wheel go around. And I don't think I've got anything else in here that I need to oil. I'm trying to think. I don't bother. Oh yeah, I know. I want to oil the inside of the center wheel. So right in down here, right down there, and that'll spin around. So that'll share the oil as it spins around. Although I'll put a little bit more in there because that's a point of friction here. Like that. And then I've got one more. I'm trying to think what that is. Is that the intermediate wheel? I think it might be the intermediate wheel. So I want to put a little bit of oil there. That's just sitting down there and minding its own business. And that's perfect. And then I'm going to oil a little tiny bit of oil on the fourth wheel and avoiding the pivot. I'm not actually sure if I transferred any oil there, so I'm going to do that again. And that's good there. And all these have been oiled before, as you saw in the previous video. And now for the cams, I want to take some D5 and stabbing my oiler in here to make sure it's clean, and take some D5 here. And I'm looking at the friction points here. So this is a friction point right here, so I can put my oiler right in there and throw some D5 right in there. And I don't need to oil this. This is a spring, and I oiled it on the other side, if you recall, right? So now when I move this out like that, it's going to spread the oil. I may oil the arm a bit here because it's not going to hurt oiling that. There we go. Now you see positive contact, and you remember before when I oiled the inside of the stem as it went through, right? So that's oiled. So oiling on pocket watch is an art itself, I think, but it's a good art. So I want to put the cannon pinion back on. That's been dried for a long time. And with any luck, that cannon pinion is just going to go straight down without a problem. I like to actually, when I put the cannon pinion down, I like to have this on a hard surface on the other side so it doesn't push. So I don't want it to be on this spongy thing here. I'd rather it to be on a harder thing. And I get what I do is I get a stake from my staking set that this will fit into. So I've seen guys, which you can do, push it down with your tweezers, but if I do it with a stake, it's putting equal pressure on all of the leaves of the gear there. So let's grab a stake. So I'm playing a little game I like to call Goldilocks, because I have to take the stake and measure the end and make sure it just fits over the top of the cannon pinion. Sometimes it's too big, sometimes it's too small, so that's what I like to call Goldilocks. So when I push this down now, it should go straight down without a problem, and there we go. So that cannon pinion went down, no issue at all. And I'm not going to bother putting the second wheel or the hour wheel on because I want to make sure that the the watch runs first before I put the face on. So I'm going to, and I've got those 3 components that I need to put on before I do that. So I got to get some work done, and got to get some work done on the balance first, and make sure that balance is in the supreme position. I'm actually going to do that after lunch because I want to be completely awake and sane while I put this balance on and get that thing ticking. But it's going to be ticking as part of this video. I'm not going to cut it off. So that's, so far I think I'm good with this watch, and let's just take a break. I'll be back in 1 millisecond for you. So I'm going to tighten this back into the Myers number 57, number 58 movement holder. 57 was a failure in design. So that's number 58 movement holder, and I got to make sure I don't forget to put the ring on, because there's a dust cover on this thing that needs to go on before I can finish this watch off. So I put the dust cover is going to go on. It's where is that dust cover? I've got it hiding here amongst my stuff. So here's the face, which is in immaculate condition actually, and I'm trying not to touch anything here. My back of my fingernail, and there's the dust cover there. So I want to put that dust cover on after, but I can only put that dust cover on after I've put the balance back in. So we'll put the balance back in after I've reassembled the balance. And here's the balance here. So I usually reassemble the balance under my stereo microscope because it's a hell of a lot easier to do. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be back with the full balance. And this is what it all kind of looks like at a distance. It's JD here. I'm back with a vengeance, as they say. So I've got the balance together. It took a little bit of work, I got to admit. And the other thing is, there was oil between the leaves of the springs of the balance. So what I had to do is fill another one of these caps up with lighter fluid completely, and use a very fine brush to brush the complete balance, the hairspring, everything in there, to get that oil off with this lighter fluid. So it's been done, and if that oil was on there before, this would absolutely be the problem. Like, I saw the leaves of the hairspring, and they were kind of stuck together like that with the oil, where there should have been a space. Sometimes there was like a space between the hairspring with oil in the middle of that space. And I actually took a couple of leaves of watch paper. I cut the little tiny triangles, and I dipped those triangles between the leaves of the hairspring, of course using my stereo microscope, and because you cannot do that unless you've got a stereo microscope. And then I realized how much oil there was still in between the leaves of the hairspring. Unbelievable, the amount of oil that's been in this watch. That would absolutely affect the beat error of the watch and all kinds of other stuff. So this watch is now oil free, and I just need to get the hairspring, the balance, back in position. And that's what we're going to do right now, is put that balance in and see if I can get any action out of that. And so with all the crap on my desk, I can't find one of my oiler covers. It's hiding behind something, and I don't know where it is, but we'll put that away face up right now and deal with that later. So the first thing I need to do to get this watch in action and put the balance back in is to wind it. So I got to find where the winding mechanism is. I'm going to put my glove back on because I don't want to touch it. So you can see how many hours of work I've put into this watch. I put around 3 hours of work in it this morning, and then I've done about another, let me see, where's the winding part? I've done another probably around 4 or 5 hours on the watch to get it to where it was, the cleaning, all the rest of that stuff. So at the end of the day, I'll have put around 10 hours into this watch. That's a lot of work, and I hope it's appreciated. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of a wind on this watch. I don't need to put a lot of a wind. I just need to make sure that it's I want the pallet fork to snap into position. So I need to have that done properly so that when I hit that pallet fork, like you can see it goes. it snaps back and forth. So I'll put the balance in, then I'll check the bead error. And then after I've done that, I'm going to see if I can correct the bead error if I have a bead error problem now. Don't know if I do anymore because of what was done. I could see something's bugging me here, and that's the top of this here. Doesn't look as clean as it should be. I clean that off with a little bit of Rodico. Rodico is Watchmaker's best friend. I want to make sure that this watch is functional and looking good as well. So I'm just going to, I like to tip the movement over when I do this, so I can't tip the movement over if I've got it in the wrong position here. So let me just move this around. I'm going to again pay attention to where the lever is for this. So if I can put that lever in the right position here. Right there is probably nice. Hard to say. No, actually the lever needs to go right above here a little bit. So I'm not going to squish it, but it's riding up a little bit high on the end here, but I want to be able to tip this forward like this to get this in position. So the first thing I do, I like to enter the watch from this direction here, counterclockwise. So I make sure that the pallet fork is over on this side, and then I'm going to try to merge this in with that lower jewel setting. It's not an easy job to put it in, but you get used to it after a while, but it is a job. So let me just take the balance off here. This is probably the hardest job, the most testy job that you have in actually putting together a pocket watch. So I'm going to just dip this down a bit so it goes underneath the wheel here, and then put this watch in like that. I don't like the way it's spun around all of a sudden. That's because I'm sitting on the on its there we go. So it's in now, but it's not in the correct position because I can tell that the watch itself is at an angle. So, and you end up taking it in and putting it out and all that crap many times before you get it right, I think. So I'm just going to dip it again, try to get it out of here without stretching the spring, and then put it back in again at an angle like so. Hopefully that's right. And then I want to turn that like this, and I want to put the balance cock down carefully and see if I get action, and I do. There you go. Seems to be running nicely. So here's where I use my stick again. I put the minute little bit of pressure on it, and I've got it set for super slow, I think, right now. So I'm just going to put the screw in here, and I'm going to very carefully screw this down. And I think you can see all this going on. So there's always, do I go left or right with my camera? I'll go like this. So there you go. So I got the watch is ticking nicely. So let's see if I've have a minute bit of success here. All right, so that's in there now. I tightened it a bit and there's no issue, which is great. So there's no problem there. So now it's running. So I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to take a slow motion video of the watch because I want to see the balance and where it's starting and stopping. And that'll give me an idea. It's not going to give me a beat error, but it's going to give me an idea if it starts and stops in an equal amount, an equal arc. So back in the day, watchmakers didn't have slow motion video cameras, but we do now, so you can do that. So it's 6 seconds of slow-mo, and then I can now see, just push this aside here for a second, I can now see what this kind of looks like. And there it is there, and it's got about 360 degrees of turn on it. It's not great, not too bad. And I want to see where it stops and starts. You know what? It seems to be, I'm looking at one of the arms and I'm looking at how far around it goes. So that's what I'm doing here. And when I look at that, I get my hand splint here. Hang on a second. That's my photos here. Yeah. So there we go. So that's going back and forth. So I'm looking at that arm there going around. It's starting there and going all the way around to this side here. And I'm seeing where the other arm is stopping and starting. And is it starting and stopping in an equal place? That's the question. It looks pretty close. So the bead error might not be as bad as it was before. So I'm going to take this off and then let's put this in the timing machine to see what we've got. First I'm going to put a little bit more of a wind on the watch so I know it's wound up. Not completely, but it's wound up enough so it's got enough power. And it's going to take a while for the watch to work itself in. And given that a pocket watch has got about 7 turns on a mainspring, right? That's quite a few turns. Let's see what kind of power this has, and put this in the timing machine now. So here's the watch in what would be in dialed down position, and then I've got myself a bead error. Let's just glide up here. Still high. The bead error is still 5.1. The amplitude's not bad, actually 276. That's pretty good amplitude. And I'm at minus 80 seconds per day, but if you look at the movement the way it is right now, you can see that it's jacked over to pretty fast here, which means I could see if I can do an adjustment on the mean time screws to see if I can maybe do a quarter turn inward to speed the watch up a bit, because it's running slow and I'd like that arm to be in the middle and not where it is. But I do have to deal with this bead error, so I'm going to see if I can take all the power off the watch and then see where the impulse jewel sits to the left or right of the banking pins to determine whether I have to turn the collet left or right. So I got a bit of work here to get this watch working perfectly, but it's together and it's running, and that's a good thing, and it's clean as a whistle, so that's good. It's running very strong, so I'm liking the results. So there you go. So JD here again. So I think I'll make a separate video on actually regulating this watch, because it's going to take a long time to get this thing perfect, and you get the full assembly and all of that. So we'll just call this assembly and initial test, and we'll go for a different video for regulating the watch, because it's going to be a different kettle of wax. No, it's a ball of wax. It's a kettle of fish, I think, something like that. Anyway, so thanks for subscribing to my channel. Please continue to subscribe. Lots of comments. I love comments. There's the watch running there, and it's got a pretty darn good amplitude on it, which means it's getting plenty of power, so that should help me with the regulation. But as you can see, I've jacked the arm all the way over on the fast side here to get this thing running faster, and it still isn't running fast enough. I did put pressure on this arm and then tighten the screw. Just when you do these watches, you can break this screw here, so it takes a lot of force to push this arm over. So you just push the arm over with your piece of pegwood into the position you think it needs to be in, and then adjust the screw. So that's the best way of doing it, I find. I'm going to have to back the screw off, I think, in order to get this other screw out again. So I'm going to take the power off the watch and see if under my stereo microscope whether I can actually determine where that impulse jewel is sitting, to the left or right of the center of the banking pins. So get rid of that 5 millisecond problem, and then maybe it's not going to improve. It probably won't improve the it won't make much change to the amplitude at all, but it might make a small change to the timing of the watch. So anyway, we'll get rid of that. We'll get that bead error gone, and we'll improve the speed of it a little bit. So I'll catch you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.